Hey guys, so College Humor just uploaded a video talking about taxes, and since I run a semi-financial channel, I thought I'd talk a little bit about it because I do think that this video is fairly deceptive and it's not as simple as the video makes it out to be. But they were talking about return-free tax filing, which is the idea that instead of you having to do the taxes by yourself and sending the government a payment, the government should do the taxes for you and just send you a bill and you pay the bill as with any other business. But the reality is that this is a lot more complex and that College Humor really did get this one quite wrong. So I'm going to do a rebuttal video. I'm generally not very good at editing videos, so I'm going to be practicing with this one a little bit. It's going to be a little bit more than just me talking in front of my screen while recording my screen. So let me know what you think, and let's roll clip number 1.
Why doesn't the government just tell you how much you owe?
Well, because they need to know my income, my interest on my savings, all the numbers that are on those forms.
Newsflash, they already do. Employers, banks, and other financial institutions already send detailed records to the IRS.
Okay, we just got Hank's W-2s and 1099s. I could calculate his tax bill myself. Nah, I'll just wait quietly while he sends me the exact same information.
So this idea that the government has all of your numbers that are required to do your taxes and that they could just simply punch them into a calculator and get all of the taxes that you owe them is a really oversimplified idea, and it doesn't really paint the whole picture. So the tax code in America is really, really complex, and to do your taxes for most people, it's a little bit more difficult than just punching in a few numbers into a calculator. If you work a 9-to-5 job and you don't really have any other sources of income, you have no kids, you have nothing, yeah, your taxes are pretty easy to calculate. But if you have a retirement account, if you have a bunch of itemized deductions that apply, if you have like a bunch of different things, the taxes get a lot more complex. And this idea that the government could just take all of your numbers, punch them into a calculator, and it would be done, it's really, really deceptive. It's not how it works. And the reality is that the government would have to get a lot more employees. The tax code changes every single year, so they would have to be up to date on that. Also, the numbers that are reported to the government, they're not reported early enough for the government to be able to do your taxes themselves. So the deadlines would actually have to be cut, meaning that people would have to report the numbers earlier, and that means that employers would actually have to give more money they would have to spend more money to actually provide the government with all the relevant numbers and all that stuff. So it's not this simple. Anyways, moving on.
Ooh, honey, our taxes came.
Oh, just need to deduct that work trip to Toledo, and we're done.
So the clip makes it seem like taxes would become really, really simple if the government just did them for you. The reality is that if you work a 9-to-5 job, your taxes really shouldn't take that long. If you work a 9-to-5 job and you don't really have any other income, any sort of deductibles or anything, taxes are really simple. It would probably take you about 10 minutes to do them if you know what you're doing roughly and if you've done it before. But if your taxes are much more complex, even if the government were to do them for you, they would still have to send you a paper or some sort of an email or something. You would have to read through all of it. You would have to make sure that everything is correct. Then you would have to sign off on it and send it back to them and then pay whatever you owe. But if that was the case, it would actually take you a good amount of time to actually read that, so it would not save you that much time, if any time. But also, if the government actually makes a mistake and you don't end up reading through all of the code and you sign and pay when there's a mistake, the mistake would be on you. So if the government made a mistake and you didn't catch it and you signed off on it, that mistake could later come to bite you in the ass. So it would not be as simple as just receiving a little paper that you have to sign and it's done. It just wouldn't really be that simple.
I'm sold. Give me return-free filing.
Sorry. The makers of tax software like TurboTax and H&R Block spend a buttload of money to make sure it never happens.
So the problem that I have with this clip is that it's not very consistent. So I know that a lot of people don't like it whenever companies or corporations lobby the government to get what they want, but if you're going to be talking about this issue, especially in a video, you have to be consistent about it. So let's talk about subsidies just to be a little bit more specific. So if you're going to give the government the power to give certain companies subsidies, those companies, those people are going to try to get themselves subsidies because subsidies are basically free money. They're going to try to lobby the government in one way or another. There's no amount of regulations that you can introduce in order to prevent corruption, right? So in other words, corruption cannot be prevented. Companies will lobby to get themselves free stuff. Everybody will do that as long as the power structure exists. So if you don't want corruption in terms of companies lobbying the government to give themselves subsidies, for example, you have to get rid of the power of government to give subsidies as a whole. Otherwise, people will try to use it and abuse it to get themselves free stuff. And the problem with the clip is that Adam ruins everything. A lot of the time, whenever there's an issue in society or an issue that he talks about in one of his videos, a lot of the time his solution to pretty much any given issue is to get the government to make a law that fixes the issue. So if you're going to be talking about these issues, you have to be consistent, and he is not very consistent when it comes to government power. So I'm not a big fan of the fact that he talks about this in a very inconsistent way.
These calculating companies have lobbied to kill multiple return-free filing bills over the past decade.
And they're using my money to do it? Well, that's shameless. So you're saying the government could be doing my taxes for me, for free, but TurboTax and H&R Block are working like crazy to stop that from happening?
Exactly.
So those two clips are the biggest problem that I have with this video, because those two clips are very, very deceptive. So the first clip talks about how the guy is mad that lobbyists would use his tax money to run agendas that are directly against them. And the second clip implies that the government would do your taxes for free while TurboTax would charge you for it, which is completely false. If the government were to do your taxes for you, the government would have to pay for them. So the way that it would pay for them is by taxing you. So in other words, they would do your taxes for you, but you would have to pay like $30 more in taxes because the government has to pay for all the work that they put into calculating your taxes. Same thing as with TurboTax. The only difference is that TurboTax is a private company and it has to compete with other companies. So TurboTax actually has a direct incentive, a profit incentive, to make sure that their program is user-friendly and that it costs as little as possible to produce and that it's accurate, that it doesn't really have any mistakes, because otherwise they get sued. If the government were to do your taxes for you, they would not have an incentive to make a program that would be really user-friendly. And if you've used any government programs, usually they're not very well designed. Also, they would not have a profit motive, so in the long run, it would actually end up costing them more to do your taxes for you rather than you just doing it yourself, or just having a company like TurboTax pretty much guide you through doing them for you. But those two clips pretty much summarize the problem that I have with this video. It's very deceptive, and the language that it uses is not very honest. If we're going to actually analyze these sorts of things, you have to be pretty honest with the terms that you use. You can't use the term free whenever you're talking about a government program. Nothing is free. It's going to get paid by somebody's tax money. And if you actually want to calculate which would be more efficient and which would be better for your average American, you would actually have to bring up numbers. You would have to look at statistics. But the reality of it is that the video equates it to being free when it's not, which is a major problem. And that's an issue. So it's much more complex than the video makes it out to be, and it's very deceptive and it's very one-sided, so I'm not a big fan of it, and hopefully this makes a little bit of sense. Let me know what you guys think about this. I would love to do more of these in the future. I'm not very good at editing. Also, I don't really know what to put on the screen when I'm just talking. I just have a random article up about Americans' tax code being too complex, but let me know what you think. Let me know if I missed anything, but I think that my criticisms were on point, so that's it.